Sir, I don't see how you can possibly say that the European budget is efficient when the European budget is a byword for corruption, waste and fraud.
A European body was set up in 1999 to recover the funds that have disappeared from the European budget.
Nearly €1 billion were lost to fraud last year, according to EU investigators. The European Anti-Fraud Office, also known as OLAF, made the claims in its annual report. It said €888 million were paid out to fraudulent claimants of EU funds last year. It said the largest concentration came from Romania, Bulgaria and Hungary.
The European Union is demanding an additional £900 million from the UK. It comes as the largest public spending cut since the Second World War was announced. Thousands of protesters took to the streets of London, saying it'll condemn the UK to years of brutal unemployment. Now, the European Union wants an extra £900 million from the UK. As we know, the British Prime Minister is very unhappy with that request. But is it a fair order from the EU?
Certainly not. At a time when in Britain we're having to cut back public spending by almost 20%, the EU wants more money from British taxpayers, money we can't afford. We're having to cut our cloth to suit our needs, and the European Union should do the same. We shouldn't be handing extra money to the EU.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the title of this report is A Satirist's Dream, closing the gap between anti-corruption law and reality. I could fill my 60 seconds talking about the 18 years' worth of unaudited accounts, or the bazillions that are squandered on agriculture and foreign aid boondoggles, or the Tillack case where instead of any of the alleged fraudsters being arrested, it was the journalist trying to find out about them who found himself banged up by the police. I could talk about the £6.6 million spent last year by European commissioners simply on entertainment and luxury gifts and hotels. I could talk about the wonderful spectacle of President Van Rompuy and Commissioner Ashton flying to the same meeting in Russia in separate private jets, leaving Brussels within 4 hours of each other.
The highest category are people that earn a net take-home pay of just over £100,000 a year, and yet under EU rules they pay tax of 12%. It's tax fraud on an absolutely massive scale, and Mr Barroso, I would say to you that how can that be deemed to be fair? How can people out there struggling, the 16 million unemployed in the Eurozone, how can they look at these institutions not only paying people vast sums of money but allowing them tax and also, of course, pension benefits on a scale not seen anywhere else in the world?
4 days every month, the EU Parliament literally packs up its bags, with thousands of bureaucrats, officials and translators, and thousands of boxes of paperwork transported 300 miles to this lavish building, and is empty more than 300 days of the year. So we've just been asked to move on. Everyone seems really tetchy that we're filming empty lorries. Now, why would they be upset about that? And the cost of this move? Well, it's a lot. Some figures put it at £130 million a year. That's 50 million spent on building maintenance alone. In total, this farce cost nearly £2 billion since it started.
I believe it is madness for this European Parliament to approve the 2009 EU budget when financial irregularities or possible fraud affect between 2 to more than 5%. These are not figures made up by me to suit party political propaganda, but estimates from the European Court of Auditors. The level of irregularities for 2009 are abnormally high and equate to half of the UK's contribution for the EU for this year, roughly €3.6 billion.
We shouldn't be giving this money to the European Union. Our contributions are set to rise. The EU accounts haven't been signed off in over 15 years because there's so much fraud, waste and mismanagement within the European Union. We just shouldn't be giving this money at all.
Britain will face a hefty bill for Brexit, a senior EU official has warned. European Commission Chief Jean-Claude Juncker told Belgian politicians, "The British should know this. They know this already, that it will not be at a discount or at zero cost. The British must respect commitments they were involved in making. So the bill will be, to put it a bit crudely, very hefty."
Astronomical amount of taxpayers' money have been given to Greece, Ireland, Portugal and Spain by the EU since 2010. 285 billion euros. You hear me correctly. 285 billion euros, ladies and gentlemen. What happened to this money? The failure by the EU in keeping tabs on funding means that nobody can know for sure. And now you want more money to waste on promoting deeper European integration. The Lisbon agenda was a disaster. Can anyone here say that Europe is the most dynamic knowledge-based economy in the world? Only if you are an ostrich.
With just weeks to go before Britain decides its fate, it seems other nations want in on the action. An Ipsos Mori polls found nearly half of voters in 8 big European Union countries want to vote on their membership, with a third saying they want out of the bloc. In Italy and France, the hypothetical vote leave camp is over 40%, double the number in Spain and Portugal.
We've got traditional own resources, fraud up by 191% in a single year. And we hear a lot about VAT fraud here, but actually part of the problem is that VAT is one of the most bureaucratic systems of tax collection known to humanity.
Another one bites the dust. Country number 4, Spain, gets bailed out, and we all, of course, know that it won't be the last. Though I wondered over the weekend whether perhaps I was missing something, because when the Spanish Prime Minister, Mr. Rajoy, got up, he said that this bailout shows what a success the Eurozone has been. And I thought, well, having listened to him over the previous couple of weeks telling us there wouldn't be a bailout, I've got the feeling after all his twists and turns, he's just about the most incompetent leader in the whole of Europe.
The EU wants to punish the UK. Now, I'm going to use Mark Thornton's words that it's not like the EU has such a shiny report card in terms of its economic stats when you look at it as a whole, especially with 3 countries such as France, Italy and Spain running such high debts. So how do you think the EU, based on what you have said, is going to punish the UK in terms of these talks?
Well, this is what it will do. I think this is what we'll be seeing, and it's what we've already seen from Brussels, is really just simply harsh words for Britain, saying, you know, you're not going to get what you want. It's going to be basically a minimal deal from us. We're not going to negotiate unless we absolutely have to. And it's an arrogance, which I think is the reason why so many people across Europe, looking at the financial record of Brussels and also the record of dealing with the migrant crisis particularly, have decided that they don't want much more to do with Brussels. Of course, the reason for that is that nobody in Europe has ever elected anybody to run the EU.
Because the money that member states give to the European Union isn't properly accounted for. They don't really know where most of the money goes. It's riddled with errors, and we suspect that a lot of the money is being wasted and, of course, goes on fraud. That's the European Union's own Court of Auditors which has said that, and it won't sign off the accounts. If it was a company that hadn't had its accounts signed off in over 15 years, the directors would be struck off, or even perhaps in prison. The European Union, the money just goes, and we're not sure where it goes. And really, we can't afford to hand over the money, even if it was properly accounted for.
Well, of course, members.
You know, I remember being here 10 years ago and hearing the launch of the Lisbon agenda. We were told that with the euro by 2010 we would have full employment, and indeed that Europe would be the competitive and dynamic powerhouse of the world. By any objective criteria, the euro has failed, and in fact there is a looming impending disaster.
The point I really want to make, though, and I'd appeal to my integrationist colleagues in this House, because I don't think you have to be a Eurosceptic to be worried about this. Look at what happened in yesterday's debate, when my honourable friend Chris Eaton-Harris asked us what we were voting on, and nobody in the chamber was able to name the agency to which we just voted through supply. You're doing yourselves no favours, even as supporters of the European project, if you hand your taxpayers' money to these schemes with a Europe right or wrong attitude, without stopping to look at whether it's being efficaciously spent or whether it's being lost or stolen. And I'd appeal to all my colleagues to try and give their taxpayers some value for money from their own point of view.